The sun had not yet crested above the tree line by the time I began birding at Hickory Hills Park on this late September morning. The air was crisp and a light fog hung over the lake. My attention was soon drawn to two pied-billed grebes who were resting along the northeast boundary of the lake. These two birds may have arrived at the lake mere minutes before I showed up, as pied-billed grebes are strictly nocturnal migrants. When the first signs of light begin to show up, migrating pied-billed grebes make a beeline for the nearest body of water, where they rest and feed for the day before undertaking another leg of their migratory journeys. Of course, these looks aren't nearly as good as the views of a pied-billed grebe I had gotten a few days before, but what better way to start a day than with a couple of adorable pied-billed grebes? Behind the grebes, a group of Canada geese was beginning to mobilize and coordinate their efforts to terrorize the lake for the day. One of the geese, positioned atop a tree stump within the lake, prepared itself by combing through its feathers as an ominous haze flowed along the water's surface.
Greetings, fellow birders. I am birding at what is perhaps my favorite of all my local birding locations, Hickory Hills Park. It's got a tremendous array of habitats, and you'll recall a few weeks ago I went birding at George Wythe State Park for my fall big day, and I got 76 species there. I think I have a real chance of beating that here at Hickory Hills Park because they have even better habitats than George Wythe does. Now, at this point in the year, the neotropical migrant diversity isn't quite as good. I'm at the tail end of September, but there are still some warblers moving through. We're going to see how things play out today. I might be able to beat that 76 species mark that I had at George Wythe a few weeks ago, but if not, I'm in for some good birds nonetheless. Let's see what we can find.
I soon moved to the northwest corner of the lake where several young eastern bluebirds foraged along the parking lot. I walked out onto a peninsula that extended into the lake, hoping to scan for any birds that I had missed while I was on the other side of the lake. Luckily, I found numerous new birds for the day as I searched along the water and surrounding habitats. First was a single American coot that plucked some unknown morsels from the water's surface. American coots are primarily vegetarians, so this bird must have found some tasty algae or aquatic plants for breakfast. After some delicious snacks, the coot gave itself a good shake, practically leaping out of the water as it tried to dry off. Head pumping back and forth, the coot then swam off to explore other areas of the lake. On the far western shore, I spotted a male-belted kingfisher that was basking in the sun that had just risen above the trees. This bird pumped its tail as it prepared to look for breakfast. As I walked along shore, I was surprised to flush a green heron that landed on a dock along the peninsula I had walked on several minutes before. I began to explore the oak savanna habitat along the lake. I spotted a northern flicker perched toward the top of a tree. This female flicker provided excellent looks at her yellow tail feathers. Most of Iowa's flickers have yellow tail feathers but go a little further west, and flickers have red tail feathers. Warbler diversity really starts to taper off at the end of September in Iowa. Today, yellow-rumped warblers were far more numerous than all other warbler species combined. Even so, I still managed to see 13 warbler species in what would end up being my final double-digit warbler day of the year. This immature female northern parula was undoubtedly one of my favorite warblers that I saw today. She thoroughly surveyed her surroundings before deciding that it was safe enough to take some time to preen her beautiful feathers. A Nashville warbler was less shy, showing its dazzling lemon-yellow underside while foraging a few feet off the ground as it pursued insects among goldenrod plants.
It's pretty clear to me that the next wave of migrants is passing through now. What I mean by that is there are a ton of yellow-rumped warblers, dark-eyed juncos, and purple finches here this morning, and there are very few additional warblers aside from the yellow-rumped warblers. Of course, that's no surprise. This time of year, the sparrows really start to take over, and the warblers head out. When the yellow-rumped warblers move in, it means that it's time for all the other warbler species to get out of here.
Chipping sparrows were abundant in the oak savanna habitat. These social sparrows had banded together to enjoy the tasty seeds within a clump of grass that doubled as great protection for these bite-sized birds. I shifted my gaze back towards the canopies of the bur oak trees, and I found an eastern phoebe doing its characteristic tail pumping as it preened its feathers. Also present near the top of an oak tree was this female eastern bluebird who breathed heavily from her elevated perch before turning her head in an almost robotic way to look out towards the lake. Perhaps this young red-tailed hawk was the reason the female bluebird was seemingly so worked up. This hawk couldn't hide from prying eyes, and soon it was surrounded by numerous robins. I tracked down one of those robins on a nearby patch of lawn. This bird may have molted recently, as the feathers on the back of its neck look especially sparse. An itchy rose-breasted grosbeak was also among the birds that were keeping an eye on the intruding red-tailed hawk. This drab, nondescript bird may not look very exciting, but I was thrilled to discover this indigo bunting that offered exceptional looks as it scooted up a tree. As I walked along the road, I noticed several messy purple finches dining on berries and seeds right off the pavement. In fact, these sloppy eaters were so distracted by the many morsels in front of them that I had the opportunity to set up my tripod and begin filming them. I was very excited with the results, and though the lighting was not optimal, it's not every day that I have an opportunity to get such nice shots of these delightful finches. This small group of purple finches likely just arrived at Hickory Hills Park, so these migrants were doubtlessly hungry from all the traveling they just finished. There's a good chance that these purple finches will spend the winter at Hickory Hills, as this hotspot is one of the best places to see purple finches in this part of Iowa, thanks to an abundance of cedar berries and fruits from numerous other shrub species. Today I observed 10 purple finches, but I've detected as many as 41 here in a single outing in the past. The only thing that could have made this interaction better would have been seeing a mature male purple finch with his stunning feathers, but when you get looks as good as these, it's hard to complain. Although seeing the purple finches was exciting, this experience couldn't begin to compare to the bird encounter I was about to have.
It's been a bonanza of bird activity so far this morning. Migrants are out in force. Tons of birds here in this oak savanna adjacent to the lake. I've got an American pipit, northern pintail, and black-bellied plover as my highlights so far.
After my update, I walked back out onto the peninsula to try to find the American pipit I mentioned in the video clip. I couldn't believe my luck as I soon spotted the bird flying directly at me before landing no more than 30 feet away. What followed could only be described as a surreal experience in which the American pipit and I shared several unforgettable minutes together. Not only had this bird practically landed within arm's reach, but it had landed in absolutely perfect lighting. I slowly crouched on my knees to get my camera as close to eye level with this wonderful American pipit as possible. Although I was very slow and cautious with my movements, the pipit doubtlessly knew I was there, as there was not so much as a twig for me to hide behind on this peninsula. Foraging for breakfast seemed to be the only thing on this American pipit's mind. I watched it capture a big, juicy spider, as well as a small insect that resembled a fly. At one point, the bird hunkered down and did a careful assessment of its surroundings when a nearby killdeer sounded an alarm. After laying low for about 30 seconds, the pipit decided the coast was clear and it resumed foraging. Although American pipits aren't rare in Iowa, they are far from common during migration. These subtle birds are very easy to overlook with their drab plumage and reserved personalities, but seeing this bird, illuminated by the soft glow of morning light, gave me a newfound appreciation of this species. I couldn't have been happier with the moments that I shared with this American pipit, and although it was a fantastic bird to add to my day's list, it would not end up being the best bird of the day. I started hiking out towards the prairie on the north end of Hickory Hills Park to add some new species to my day list. On my way out, I had a few fun observations, including a small group of broad-winged hawks zooming by overhead. I also detected a couple of vireos. Do you notice anything unusual about these vireos? Well, if you look closely, you'll see that this clip features 2 vireo species. A red-eyed vireo is in the background, while a Philadelphia vireo is in the foreground. Here's a better look at a red-eyed vireo as it foraged in good light towards the top of a tree.
It's a gorgeous day out here on the Hickory Hills Prairie. There's not a cloud in the sky. That's not ideal for picking up migrants though, because when they pass overhead, there's not much contrast to pick them out against the blue sky. Nevertheless, I got a small kettle of broadwing hawks passing over. I've got a sedge wren out here. It's my first true grassland species of the day. Let's see what else we can find.
There wasn't initially a ton of action at the prairie, with this turkey vulture being among the few birds that I detected.
I just found what is arguably the bird of the day in this small brushy patch behind me. I was about to wrap up my time in the prairie. I hadn't found a ton of new things for my days list, just song sparrow, Lincoln sparrow, and the sedge wren. But then I flushed a tiny little sparrow, and it perched up in this brushy patch.
This raggedy LeConte sparrow was a very exciting find for me. Although these tiny sparrows aren't exceedingly rare, anyone who's ever seen a LeConte sparrow knows how unwilling they are to let birders get good looks at them. They rarely perch in the open, so even though this bird was just a few feet off the ground and obstructed by prairie grasses, I was thrilled to find a few openings through which I could obtain some footage of this species. Iowa is a pit stop for this elusive grassland specialist as it makes its way from its Canadian breeding grounds to the southern United States for winter. Late September through October is the best time to look for LeConte sparrows in the state. On my way out of the prairie, I saw another northern flicker, but unlike the one earlier, the dark mustache stripe on this bird proves it's a male. After seeing the northern flicker, I got one final new bird for my day's list, a bay-breasted warbler. This bird did not have the distinct red streaks on its side that many bay-breasted warblers do, but I noticed that it did not have orange feet. If this bird would have had orange feet, it would have been a much less common black bull warbler. But I was still very excited to see this handsome bay-breasted warbler.
I've tallied up the species that I observed here at Hickory Hills, and the results are in. I got 74 species here. That's 2 less birds than I got at George Wythe State Park on my big day. But if I'm being honest, I think the birds here at Hickory Hills today were way better than the birds that I got at George Wythe on my big day. That view of the American pipit, that was just incredible. It was really difficult to find neotropical migrants today. I had to really work for those birds. The warblers and flycatchers were just really few and far between. I still ended with 11 warbler species, I think, but I only got 2 flycatchers, eastern phoebe and eastern wood pewee. Pretty much all the flycatchers seemed to have moved out, so that just really hampered my day's total. But I had a really spectacular day here at Hickory Hills Park. Thank you so much for following along on this journey, and if you like my birding adventures, then be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future content. I'll catch you guys on my next worldwide birder journey.